Welcome back to Empowerment Radio. I'm here with Tahnee and Alan, all the way from Australia, talking about their books and their whole movement, the 10 Terrains, which is just a wonderful way to making sense out of how we live our lives and in many ways how we also are programmed. And so where are the terrains programmed in? Is it subconscious? Is it something that goes beyond the subconscious? How would you say, where can someone find their terrain origin?
Well, to understand your terrain, I would invite your listeners to go to our website at 10terrains.com, and that's spelled TENTERRAINS.com. And we have a quiz that you can take. And this quiz is a way to give you a snapshot of where you are along this continuum. Where you're sitting is really a function of the beliefs you're holding, the traumas you've got in your field, the stories you're holding onto, your judgments. You're really a bundle of energy. We're all energetic beings. We're electrical beings. And so all of this is held in our field. So this really is underneath the behaviors and the beliefs and all of the things that we tend to look at as far as, well, where would the programming sit? The programming sort of sits on top of the terrain, and the terrain really takes on whatever programming is. If you think of certain kinds of, tundras, for example, are going to grow certain kinds of terrain or plants, and mountainous areas are going to grow different kinds of plants. And so it depends on the terrain that you're holding underneath you that is going to determine what you believe and what programming you're going to take on. And I will also say that we really have a continuum here where at one end of this continuum, we're really being driven by ego, apart from spirit, if you will, or infinite self. And at the other, it's entirely coming from our self with a capital S. Again, I'll say that, our infinite self or spirit. And the ego is really then subsumed to that infinite knowing. So there's a journey that we go through that takes us really out of the conditioned mind and out of the mental, and puts us into a much bigger framework, which I would say is non-local, that then encompasses the quantum field, encompasses really the whole of the collective that's around us. And so that's also going to influence where we're at and how we're acting.
That's a good answer.
Now, would you say that, as a soul or as an infinite self, you choose what terrain you get born into? Because, I could imagine the infinite self say, I'm going to skip the first 5. I don't want to go there. Let's go to the other one. So why would any soul or spirit choose the first 5? Other than just for the development or the evolution or the experience.
Excellent question. Partly what happens is it's kind of a lock and key sort of a thing. Because you're this charge, you come in from a past life where you left off, where you left off the last life, what you needed to learn or what was left to be learned, or where you need to do in your healing, if you will, your healing back to yourself. That's kind of where you're going to pick up, unless you're a very expanded master and you've been through lifetimes, and you can pretty much then decide where you're going to land because you're here in service to do something at a certain terrain. You're here to bring a lesson, or you're here to bring a teaching through that might need to be at pyramid or square or diamond. So you would intentionally come in and bring yourself into a situation. But for the majority of people, we're really on a healing journey, and it's a healing journey back to ourself, to lose all of these traumas and stories and judgments. Because I could use this rubber band as an example. If my finger represents infinity as the singularity of this consciousness, and I pull this rubber band away from that's how much charge is holding me away from this. It's a self-healing universe, just like it's a self-healing. Our bodies are self-healing. This entire system is self-healing in principle. So as you let go of the stories and you let go of the judgments and you heal the traumas from past lives and genetic lines, this is naturally going to relax itself to where you're just now holding a place of neutrality. And that's really what mastery is.
And I just want to add something to that that's really important to understand here. Like, inherent in that question, why would a soul choose to come in at square or diamond or circle or whatever, the soul is neutral. The soul doesn't have any judgments about one terrain is better than the other. It's just, where do I need to be for the growth that I need at this point in my journey? And we really need to understand this. When we step back far enough to see that there's a higher good for any point along this continuum, not just for our own learning, because at each terrain is like a classroom. We're learning amazing things at each terrain that we need to know. I mean, if we didn't know how to have free will at pyramid, nothing in our society would function.
Right.
You know, if we didn't know how to have systems and order at square, nothing in our society would function. Like, these are crucial evolutionary points for an individual and for a collective. But it's not just that, it's that each terrain has its own gifts, but also each terrain is equally valuable to its effect on the collective. So, you know, if I was a soul and I'm coming in for a specific purpose that I'm playing in the collective over the course of my life, I'm going to know what is needed from me. Where do I need to be to make the impact that I'm here to make? Where do I need to be to have the training that I need to make that impact? So let's say I'm coming in to be Abraham Lincoln and my job is to end slavery. I need to spend a lot of time at square, because square is in reaction to pyramid, the rule-based terrain. And they're like, oh, it's all this exploitation is not right. We need to create a system where everybody's treated fairly. That's what happens at square. So I might need to choose to spend my lifetime at square, going deeply into that terrain to learn all the lessons of it so I can contribute that. So it's really important to stay very neutral. No terrain is better than any others. Just like if you're 14 years old, it's not better than being 16 years old or being 18 years old. It's just a different point in your journey. And so we're always reminding people of that.
Well, I agree that there is no judgment, and I'm sure that Donald Trump played his role perfectly in a way of bringing us to the next level as a collective. However, I think some terrains, sound to me, are more associated with suffering than others. Like you said, this tension. I mean, if you are way back there and looking outside of yourself for answers, there is a tension. There is, and I'm working a lot with people that are dealing with fear, anxiety, depression, and on a subconscious level, and that tension often comes from that disconnect from self. So I would say, yes, there is certainly not so much judgment around the choice, but I know there is certainly a terrain that is harder for some people or for many people than others. And if you are in a spiral or in the hologram, you probably have a greater level of peace than when you are living all the way back in the pyramid. I don't know what your perspective on that is.
To some degree.
Yes, I would say there's a broad truth to that, because certainly at the matter-based terrain, you're really in a survival place and very much in a victim. Everything's happening to me. It's like I'm just a victim. Everything, I'm blaming everybody outside of myself. Everything is a potential threat or an enemy to me. And that relationship is a very anxiety-inducing, fear-reactive place to be. And as you become more connected in with yourself, as you move across this continuum, yes, you do come to greater degrees of peace within yourself, because you understand that you and everything else are this one consciousness. And so you start to have a relationship with your greater self and start to trust life and start to realize that, well, if things are happening, it's because of how I'm holding my thoughts and my energy, and I'm attracting these to me, because we are, again, electrical magnetic beings. And so things are all just happening by physics. And so when you get that, you start to look at your thoughts, you start to become more, just relaxed in your thinking and more compassionate and accepting. And that allows then to have this feedback loop happen where life says, okay, well, you're starting to get that. So, it reciprocates in kind.
But at the same time, there is more peace as someone expands through this continuum. Particularly the jump from diamond to circle is a big shift. But each terrain, because the first 5 are what we call fear reactive and the second 5 are what we call love responsive. So that jump, as someone's moving from diamond to circle, they're moving into love responsiveness and leaving the history of being more fear reactive. But even though there is more peace, it doesn't necessarily mean the journey gets easier. If you talk to someone at Spiral or Torrid or Infinity, they're not going to say their love's easy, because the stuff that they're grappling with at that point is just as hard and just as big of a mystery school. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here, because what would be the point? There's nothing they're learning. So they're still learning big stuff. It's just not that stuff. It's not so much how to manage fear and anxiety. It's more how to stay self-responsible and connected to myself in all moments. How do I take full responsibility for the reality showing up in every moment without ever assigning any blame to anything outside myself? That's not an easy thing to do. And so as someone's expanding, they're just the lessons, that the things that they're practicing are different, but they're equally hard. But yes,
Right.
in the same time, they will have more peace because they're not so, they can come back, they can bring themselves back to their center more. They still get knocked out of their center, but they can bring themselves more and more quickly back to their center.
And there's something probably to be said for the gravity of the prevailing terrain. If everybody around you is speaking the same language, say French, then you're going to have an easier go of it than if you're someplace else and you're a little bit more foreign. So, you know, at the prevailing terrain of Diamond now, people are pretty much at home. And so it's an easy place to be because everybody's kind of consensus reality and everybody's kind of acting the same. And you know, most of your people around you are doing the same thing. So you kind of feel at home. Whereas if you were back more at, say, the faith-based terrain or will-based, you're going to be probably feeling a bit foreign. And certainly as you're more expanded, you're going to feel a bit more lonely and isolated because there's fewer people around. And so you're going to be looking for kindred spirits that you can relate to and have affinity with because you're going to find that there's, you know, not only fewer numbers, but then you've got to find them around you.
One of the nice things about doing the 10 Terrains quiz is we've had a lot of people write to us who are at Spiral or Toroid and they don't really know people at the same terrain as them because everyone in their family's at Square, maybe they've got a few friends at Diamond, they might know a couple of people at Circle, but you know, they write to us and say, how do I find people? And that's what part of what we're building here is a way for people to come into this community and get to know each other and find kindred spirits, and just to know that they're not alone and that they may be having some really strange experiences because they're connecting to infinite parts of themselves that they've never seen before, and they're having spiritual experiences or energy experiences and they don't understand what's happening. And they do the quiz and they find out they're at Toroid or at Spiral and they read it and they sometimes write to us in tears saying, I finally feel like someone understands me. I'm not weird. I'm not the only person like this. In fact, they're not. There's thousands of millions of other people who are exactly like them. They just don't know them personally. Because, you know, 1% of the population is still a lot of people when you're talking about 7 billion people.
Yeah, it's just not reflected in our media. It's just not shown on TV. So it's like there's no representation at either of these ends. It's more all the representation is really around Square and Diamond in our society.
Well, when we come back, we'll talk more about these other 5 more heart-centered and love-centered terrains, but also about, can we go backwards? And is fear something that can pull us back into the other terrains? We'll be right back. Hi, Dr. Friedemann here. Thank you for tuning into my YouTube channel. If you're interested in learning more about fear and anxiety, here you'll find guided meditations, webinars, and interviews with some of the most renowned experts in the field of empowerment. Delve into the over 230 videos and more to come every week.